Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of League Unlocked. Eric and Mark here with you guys with now the mid-season invitational in the rear view finals, delivering as always. We're going to do a full little recap, grade handing out, and of course we got to start with a little bit of glazing for the 23 straight series winners that is GenG. It felt like the plot armor of T1 was coming in full swing after beating anyone's legend and getting their revenge against GenG, and they were just having none of it. Even though at times in this series, halfway through game one, you're thinking, is this going to be a stomp 3-0 by T1?
Oh, man, I was convinced that there's no chance we're getting this series to go to game 5 at various points in this one. Swing with the power that was going through in this series and the performances that you got through, the compositions and the execution on them that you saw throughout it. Man, oh man, is the plot armor strong for T1? You're feeling this is it, game 5. You've got the composition. It is GenG's time to shine, and they really lay down the hammer with a decisive Game 5 victory in this one to cap off the perfect run of MSI.
It feels like the plot armor of T1, they got armor everywhere. There's no opening, but Dune style, GenG has the little needle of poison right in the neck that gets right through, because I didn't have Duro getting a pike in Game 5 over a Karma for Kyria, and not to say that Pike was the deciding factor, end-all, be-all of this Game 5. Obviously, Chovy gets MVP for the series. Ruler is fantastic in the Game 5. Keen is great across the entire series. So pretty much everybody on GenG you could be hyping up.
Everyone on GenG showed up in this finals for them, and I think one of the really important ones is you mentioned Duro at the very beginning of it, right? And it's kind of a crazy sentence to start out with because we're jumping in talking about championship GenG. Knowing the GenG lineup, okay, we're talking about Chovy, we're talking about Ruler, we're talking about Kenyon, which, yeah, we're going to be talking about those guys for sure too. But no question, we are also talking about Duro and the role that he played in this one. The Pike, I think, is an interesting option in this Game 5. The angle that I really like about it is Duro talked about, well, in the moment, I thought, well, okay, I can roll through one or two champions that are very safe options. They'll provide something for the team, but it's not in a full explosion or whatever. And then there's the option that I had of Pike, which is as aggressive as possible, as much of a risk, but it is a bet on yourself to get that action, to make the plays happen. And what you saw was really T1 make that advantage not happen early, right? You had that Caitlyn bot lane get ahead, and then you go to that top side, and that's where the big play happens for Duro. Gets the flash from Gumayusi on the hook from Pike, gets it out early, and both the bot laners get popped up there top side, and advantage is gone. Ruler's off to the races, and GenG shortly after are celebrating an MSI championship.
And to me, this is obviously back-to-back MSI titles now. To me, this one's even more impressive than last year, even though they beat BLG twice last year, and that was a behemoth, terrifying BLG, more so than at this event. But to do it against T1, because we've seen GenG dominate pretty much everybody but T1, and this is an international event. I know it's not Worlds, but to beat T1 twice and to beat this T1 that had a cataclysmic level up since the LCK playoffs, and it felt inevitable that they were going to win their first MSI title in almost a decade, and to have the door slammed shut in their face by GenG it feels like this fully is the new era.
I think it is the new era, and it's very different than other times around, even more different than last year, I would say, looking at this as a comparison. The big thing for me is who you went up against, how you did it, and how you kept the run that you had been on going into this event alive, and really brought that same level of performance, same level of tenacity, same level of focus to the main stage. That was a big deal for me with this GenG team. You look at how they played through this event. You have one sleepy, behind the wheel, unprepared game against G2. And then from that point on, it is the GenG that was the juggernaut that you expected to show up at this event. you look through the record going through BLG, excuse me, not BLG, but going through anyone's legend and having T1 in those matches, rematch as well, and getting that angle in the game 5. I think the real difference here for me is this is no longer just GenG showing up on the international stage. I think this is a GenG. This is the GenG that has dominated T1 domestically, and they're bringing that type of dominance to the international stage now.
And listen, they weren't sitting here 3-0ing everybody, completely stomping them. These were competitive back and forth series that needed to go to game 5 in 3 of their 4 sets. But time and time again, it's them coming clutch in game 5, the decider. And really what this does going forward is you look at now the LCK as a whole, and this is feeling like 2016, 2017 era where nobody was close to the LCK. I'm including the LPL here because, I mean, obviously, GenG now back-to-back MSI, 23 series in a row. T1 just beat up on Hanwha, and if you recall how first stand went, Hanwha Life looked head and shoulders above everybody else at that event, and T1 only lost to GenG. The LCK as a whole were basically undefeated at this event because it was only GenG taking down T1. So you're looking at 3 legitimate teams that could win worlds coming from the LCK. And who knows, D plus Kia, KT, someone levels up, and that's a top contender too. The LCK is terrifying.
I think we've entered a little bit of that LCK dominance era once again in League of Legends. There was a period where we had the LPL rivaling right up at the very front with the LCK, and of course, everyone else, looking for the rest of the scraps when it came to international wins in that regards. But I think right now, what we have seen through First Stand, what you have seen throughout the LCK's, regular season here, and now extended into MSI with both T1 and GenG, you got to be very fearful, very respectful of the power that will be there from the LCK when we step onto the world stage in a few short months' time. But when we're looking at things, I think it would be irresponsible to write off, teams like Anyone's Legend, teams like the Flying Oysters, even FlyQuest in that regard, as far as where they can level up and challenge and represent an upset type of opportunity, excuse me. But I think, right now, what we have seen from the very top of the LCK, it is very much so them in the driver's seat anytime we're at an international event.
And obviously that does feel a little bit like, star players being spread out. Obviously, Zeus going to Hanwha, it's kind of, you've seen everyone be brought up, leveled up, and it's now basically almost 3 years, at least 2 years of seeing GenG completely dominate domestically, T1 dominate internationally, and that's been a theme 2023 and 2024. But the history of the competitive scene kind of goes through these eras, right? You have the dark times for the LCK in 2018, where it's massive disappointment. The LPL dominates 2019 as well, and you're going, wow, can this team get back to that level? And then Damwon comes in, but it hasn't really been that LCK is light years ahead of every other region, LPL included, until what we've been entering here, and mainly just 2025, because even last year in 2023, you had JDG and BLG that were right there with the top teams from the LCK. But as good as AL was this split and this tournament, 3 LCK teams feel like you have 1, 2, 3 in terms of the best teams.
Yeah, it's a very stacked lineup in that regard when you think and you look at that type of region and everything else. I will present a little bit of hopium, a little bit of copium for our Western fans as well. And hey, let's grab the LCP. Let's include them into this type of conversation, because I think when you're looking at what you have within some of these teams like FlyQuest, like the Flying Oysters, you have these chances, these upset opportunities, and that you're not that far behind in these senses. And then it almost feels like, you get a smoothie, right? And you leave it maybe sitting out for too long, and it starts to kind of separate some of the fruit chunks from the... It's like kind of like that, where you're seeing at the very top, we've got that LCK. I think somewhere in there, you've got the LPL, and then there is this contingent of the Western squads, and I'll throw in the LCP as well to kind of boost ourselves up in our chances of getting these upsets and being competitive against what will be the juggernaut of the LCK at the World Championship.
Oh, I gotcha. So we got to mix the smoothie to make it all one piece again, which means a couple LCK players got to come over to maybe the LEC, LTA, and I'm not talking challenger players, but some of the top tier talent. That'll never happen. Everybody, don't get excited.
No, I hope you're happy and satisfied enough with Fnatic Poby, because I think that's all we're getting at this point.
Yeah, that's the appetizer that we're gonna have to be dealt with. You look at this whole, LCK, obviously A++++ for this tournament. Their main competitors, their main rivals over the last several years, LPL. Now we look back at this event and, okay, let's give some grades to both AL and BLG. And it's very obvious. I think anyone's legend gets beyond a passing grade. You're happy, you're satisfied. They went to 5 games against GenG, was competitive. Went to 5 games against T1. It was very competitive. Overall, they lived up to that first seed as the LPL, and fans of the LPL should be happy with them, right?
I really think they should. It's going to be unfortunate because they're carrying so much past failure for the region, and how much of that really, can you expect them to properly take that share as a representative of the LPL? I think when you're talking about what you saw from them, you laid it out. Those 5-game series, those tests being right up there with the very best of the best that we saw at this event. And I think at no point did you really think that they were completely outclassed, outmatched, unable to possibly pull this off in these situations. I want to specifically mention one of the guys that we talked about and we're excited about heading into this event, finally getting a chance at an international. Shanks, I thought, really did showcase some great skills, some good moments, and left a good impression on people. Anyone's legend delivered for me. It's a little unfortunate at the end of the day, but it's kind of what you expect and what you understand when you're talking about stuff at that type of power level, that type of expectation, that sometimes you're not going to get it, but if long as you show up and you do challenge a squad like a GenG, like a T1, you can accept their level of performance. BLG, on the other side, is a completely different story for the LPL, and I think that part of this is that they should be taking and accepting a larger share of that added weight that the LPL carries as a region to perform at international events. Now, to perform against the LCK, in specific, their biggest rival, and you look across that lineup, and I think for almost everybody on that BLG team, you could find a lot of places that you want to improve, that you want to be better at, more responsible for your teammates in this next split.
I mean, on paper and preseason, I think everybody would have had BLG ahead of anyone's legend when you look at their counterparts, maybe except for that jungle matchup, whether it was Wei or Beishuan for Tarzan. But yeah, BLG is getting the report card that they're lucky they're the star athlete, because otherwise they'd be going to summer school, but the teacher's going, yeah, we'll let you get through because you're, the popular one doing well, but you got to do a little bit better because, number one, I mean, they struggled, barely got past FlyQuest. There were angles where FlyQuest probably could have won that series, and even going back to the MKOI series, that was competitive. And then we see the Flying Oysters kind of handily beat MKOI, so you're scratching your head about BLG. And then you see the matchup against the actual contenders where they go 0-6 against T1 and anyone's legend. So if you are a fan of the LPL, you're looking at BLG saying, you're supposed to be the hope to beat the LCK, and you're like middle top of the pack in the LPL right now.
And it's not one where you're, opening the lunchbox and saying, oh, well, we got nothing in here to eat. No problem. You're opening it up. You're seeing peanut butter jelly sandwich. You're seeing chips, some fruits and veggies. You're seeing an extra juice box, maybe a little tiny chocolate bar for a little bit of the extra sweetness through the day. It's full. You got Bin. You got Knight. You have Elk. What else do you really, really want to be a top-level team? You have the firepower to compete, to be a threat at these events. We haven't seen that from the BLG this year. We saw a little bit of a turnaround when Beishuan stepped in and changed things in the jungle for this team, changed their momentum around as well. But since that, we have not seen it, and especially we have seen countless answers to what is the question of, is BLG an elite team? Are they at the level of the likes that we talk about with T1, GenG, anyone's legend at this point? The answer is no, because we saw that answer 2 times in the LPL playoffs. We saw that answer multiple times from different squads at this MSI. I think BLG certainly has to take a real deep look in the mirror and find a way to be the players and be the team that we know they are capable of being.
And despite kind of getting a bit gouged in some of the head-to-head jungle matchups, I don't think it's as simple as scapegoating Beishuan for the performance at this event, because like you said, he was the turnaround that BLG went on this run and looked elite again. It's kind of the collective parts of this team, you know, the team fighting, winning skirmishes that they have no business winning. The synergy didn't quite feel like it was at the same level. And that's, listen, they had this insane wombo combo against AL. We still saw these glimpses of them being on that same page, but it's just not that same war machine that we saw throughout all of 2024 with Billy.
And I think the reason we're being, so harsh, so critical of a BLG is because you see those glimpses, is because we have seen it in the past, because this isn't a team where it's a question mark about, oh, will this all work together? Do these players perform, whatever? You know the answers. You know about Bin. You know Knight. You know this BLG team can provide that firepower, can be enough to be a top tier contender. They're just not doing it right now. So you got to hit back. You got to find a way to tune it back up if you are a BLG. And I think, honestly, outside of anyone's legend who did show up, the LPL really needs a BLG to be a top tier team, to be one of the threats on the international stage.
So let's double down on the smoothie analogy here. Instead of adding some protein powder, we'll put an extra dose of copium powder into it to get ready for Worlds for the West. We kind of alluded to it, but I'm going to throw two little shining pieces of light going in, and obviously we're going to have more teams heading for both EU and the LTA. And listen, I've talked to Masu and heard other guys talk about, if Cloud9 was at this event, you're telling me they're not at a comparable or higher level to what we got out of G2 and MKOI coming in. So assuming, again, Cloud9 has to qualify, but if they lose out, hopefully there's another LTA team that we at least feel pretty good about. And Carmine Corp for the LEC, they were the shining beacon for the West at first stand. Obviously disappointing back-to-back losses to Koi, but assuming they qualify, that's two teams that I think can at least be competitive against some of these top teams from the East. But the problem is we're back in the state of this competitive scene where all we're really hoping for is competitive series out of the West when they match up against the LCK or LPL.
It does sting. It does, kind of take a bit of the fight out of some of these moments or some of these, hype ups and everything before these matches. But I really do like the angle, the glimmer, the shimmer of hope that you provide, talking about the other squads that can help flesh things out, let's say for the LTA and the LEC, the Western representatives at the international events. You're talking about a team like Cloud9, like Carmine Corp stepping on through. And I think, for at least both of them, there's reasons to believe that they would be at that type of competitive level for their regions and to show it, and especially for me specifically, Cloud9, I think is that type of option, especially with the familiarity that we both have watching the LTA and seeing how well Cloud9 performs and what they can do alongside a squad like FlyQuest. Yes, I think Cloud9 is going to be a good reinforcement if they're the ones representing as well for the LTA come Worlds times. And Carmine Corp is that other one that provides that young potential, that building block experience, as well as that talent that the LEC would like to have on the international stage.
The other angle is maybe getting a petition to rename the West and incorporating the Flying Oysters or the LCP under the wing of just non-LCK squads to try and have some hype. Because right now, CFO, we didn't get a FlyQuest versus CFO matchup, but I think those two were evenly matched. But, I mean, CFO looks ahead of the West right now.
This is not trying to be some simple thing of, oh, look at that train going along. Let's just tag our caboose onto that one and hey, let's move on with it. It ain't something like that, but I think that yes, we should have this Western coalition, if you will. Let's bring them all together. The LTA, LEC, and the LCP. We can do the three-way handshake in the middle and everything else and join forces to try and take down what would be the dominant forces of the LCK and the outliers of the LPL at this point, we'll call it, for the top tier matches at the international level. Yes, bring them on in. Bring me the oysters. Bring me Gam. Bring me Talon. Bring them all. We'll take them here for this group power against the LCK.
If you go far enough west, eventually it becomes east and vice versa. So yeah, the coalition, it all checks out there. But also, I will say this is the first time we're getting this format with the 3 international events, even though it's kind of been different teams from the West getting these scrim opportunities against the top tier squads. You're at least getting, okay, now Team Liquid has got some scrim experience and you bring it back to the LTA. We're seeing Koi and G2 and obviously FlyQuest now kind of hopefully bring back and level up that region. We've also got the event that shall not be named, which is going to be more scrim opportunities before split number 3. So maybe there is a little bit of level up heading into split 3 for some of these Western squads.
And let's be absolutely clear. There's 1,000,000% a difference in value for the scrim experiences that would have been going on this past week at MSI to the ones that will be going on at the other tournament that will be going on that does have international event level. When you are looking at what we saw, I think one of the other things to talk about is how great the event really was. I think Vancouver was a wonderful host city. They had brought tons of energy. I think I don't know if there was a single T1 fan in Vancouver that wasn't at the event and at the venue, making sure it was as loud as possible for our boys. Loved seeing that one. And I think as well, I know there's been a couple criticism. I think there always is about the broadcast and the talent that is there, but the talent that was there, the show that they delivered, the energy, I thought that they were fantastic as well. Definitely go out, give some love to Riot and some of these performers as well. I think they did a great job delivering us a wonderful, very competitive, fire-packed event that was MSI.
Yeah, a solid live event like that always just makes me miss that we don't always have some type of event for domestic finals. It seems like it's stretched out a little bit more for budgetary reasons, but only makes the hype intensify for when we do get to that World Championship this year, even if it's a little bit later in the year. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute beauties. Thanks so much for hanging out, and you know we will catch you on that flippity flip.